I snooped on my friend's phone and found out that she hates me and only communicates with me for profit. And I still continue to be friends with her because I have no one else. I read my best friend's private messages, and I discovered she secretly hates me. But I'm still pretending like nothing happened. It all started innocently. Or at least, that's what I keep telling myself when I try to sleep at night. We've been friends for years, the kind of friendship where people just assume you're inseparable. She knows my favorite snacks. I know all her ex's birthdays. We practically grew up glued to each other. But lately, something felt off. You know that weird gut feeling when someone laughs at your jokes, but their eyes look a little too empty? Or when their "yeah, totally" sounds rehearsed, like they've been practicing polite interest in the mirror. That was her. And I couldn't shake it. So one night, we were hanging out at her place. She left her phone on the couch when she went to shower, and the little devil on my shoulder whispered, "Check it. Just one peek. You'll finally know if you're imagining things." I wish I could say I fought the temptation, but let's be real. I folded in less than 30 seconds. My hands were literally shaking as I unlocked her phone. Yeah, I knew her passcode. We were that close, or so I thought. What I found hit me like a truck. There it was, a group chat with people I barely knew, and I was the main topic. Not in the "oh, she's so sweet" way. Nope. Try, "she's so clingy, I swear I only hang out with her because she drives me places." Another message, "if she didn't help me with my assignments, I would have cut her off ages ago." And the one that really stung, "honestly, I can't stand her voice. It's like nails on a chalkboard." I sat there, scrolling through months of screenshots, inside jokes. Not our inside jokes, but jokes about me. And the worst part? Some of them were pretty funny. I hated myself for almost laughing while my stomach dropped to the floor. I felt like I was intruding on my own funeral, reading the eulogies of people who were supposed to love me. And yet, when she walked back in, wrapped in a towel, smiling like nothing happened, I just locked her phone, tossed it back on the couch, and acted normal. Like I hadn't just seen the raw, unfiltered version of how she really saw me. I laughed at her story, I shared my snacks, and deep down, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't ready to lose her, even if she hated me. The most humiliating part? I kept going. We're still hanging out like nothing ever happened. Every time she texts me, "let's grab coffee," I'm already in the car before I can even process why. I know I'm her convenient chauffeur, her free therapist, her emergency homework hotline. And I know she rolls her eyes behind my back. But pretending not to know feels easier than facing the loneliness that would hit me if I cut her off. So here I am, living this weird double life. On the outside, the loyal best friend, but inside, the sad little spy who knows she's not really wanted. Nobody else knows this. Not my family, not my coworkers, not even the cat I complain to when I get home. It's my ugly little secret, and now it's out here, floating around the internet. Would you have confronted her if you were me? Or would you keep playing the role, just to avoid being completely alone? After that night, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe she had a bad day, or that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a phase. The messages I read weren't just random frustrations. They were consistent, like a hidden diary of resentment and sarcasm aimed at me. Every compliment she gave me after that felt heavy, like a performance she had memorized for an audience of one. And the worst part? I wanted to see it, even though it hurt like hell. We had plans the next weekend to go to this new cafe downtown. I spent the entire week in this anxious limbo, overthinking every text she sent. "Can't wait to see you," she wrote. Did she mean it? Or was it just politeness? By the time Saturday came around, I had rehearsed exactly how I would behave, how I would laugh, how I would act normal. Because normal was all I had left. When I arrived, she greeted me with her usual hug, the one that used to feel warm and genuine. This time, I froze mid-hug, staring at her like she was a stranger wearing my friend's face. And for the first time, I noticed the tiny habits I had overlooked for years. The way she tapped her foot impatiently, the forced cheerfulness in her voice, the way her eyes darted away when I mentioned something personal. It was like seeing a glitch in a game you've played for years. I tried to laugh it off, but the laughter tasted bitter. We ordered coffee and sat by the window, people watching and pretending to enjoy the city view. She told me about her week, how she had gone shopping, how work was okay, and how her roommate was being dramatic again. I nodded, smiled, and said the right things. Every time she laughed, I felt this pang in my chest, like I was laughing at a performance I wasn't supposed to understand. And then it hit me, she doesn't just dislike me, she uses me. Everything I've done for her, all the favors, the rides, the homework help, the emotional support, it's been transactional. And yet, I couldn't stop. I kept offering to pay for coffee, kept asking if she needed help with anything, kept volunteering my time. It's humiliating, the way your own brain twists the knife. Better to be used than to be alone. And that's exactly how I felt. Alone. Even when sitting across from her, I was lonelier than I had ever been. At one point, she reached over and grabbed my hand. Just a casual, friendly gesture. And my brain short-circuited. Part of me wanted to yank it away, to scream, to confront her about everything I had read. But another part of me, the part that craved connection, that hated being isolated, held on. I let her think this moment was real, that everything between us was perfect. I smiled. I nodded. I laughed when she joked. And inside, I was screaming. Later that day, we went to a bookstore. She wandered through the shelves while I pretended to be interested in a random novel. And then I saw it. My favorite section, filled with books I had wanted to read for years. And she walked up behind me, leaned over my shoulder, and whispered, "You're going to spend how much on that?" Her tone was teasing, but I could hear the judgment in it. I froze. In that instant, it wasn't just the bookstore, or the coffee, or the rides. It was my entire life with her, reduced to a transaction. I wanted to storm out. I wanted to yell. I wanted to say, "I know what you said about me. I read your messages." But I didn't. I smiled again, muttered something about budgeting, and let her pick her book first. And then the strangest thing happened. As ridiculous as it sounds, I laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. Because I realized how absurd this situation was. I was here, willingly letting myself be hurt, and I was somehow still enjoying her company. Pain and pleasure tangled in this twisted knot that I couldn't untangle. We walked out of the store, bags in hand, and she started chatting about some new guy she met at work. I nodded along, smiled at the right points, and even asked questions, because apparently, I was now her sounding board for gossip. And every time she mentioned him, I felt this prickly mix of jealousy and humiliation, knowing full well she would never feel the same about me. But the worst part, I didn't hate her. Not really. I couldn't. My feelings were too tangled, too complicated, too pathetic. By the time we got back to her apartment, the sun was setting. The city lights reflected in the windows, casting shadows across her living room. She flopped on the couch, exhausted, and I sat there, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. I wanted to confess everything, but the words stuck in my throat. Maybe because part of me still hoped, irrationally, that she would magically change her mind, that she would suddenly realize she liked me for me. Spoiler alert, she hasn't. And she probably never will. So here I am, still pretending. Still laughing at her jokes. Still driving her around. Still letting her sip my coffee while I sip my humiliation. Nobody knows. Not even my closest friends. Not even my therapist. Well, I haven't actually told her yet. This secret lives inside me, growing heavier each day, and sometimes I wonder if the weight will ever let me breathe again. Have you ever stayed friends with someone who secretly dislikes you, just because being alone felt worse? Or am I just completely pathetic for letting this go on? A few weeks after that bookstore incident, something happened that completely shattered the fragile bubble I had been living in. I don't even know how to start without feeling my stomach twist all over again. It was supposed to be a normal Friday night. I was at her apartment, we were watching some random Netflix series she had picked, and I was sipping on the soda I had bought because she forgot hers. She was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she always did, occasionally tossing a comment over her shoulder about something trivial. Then, out of nowhere, her phone buzzed with a notification. And I saw it. Not on purpose, or at least that's what I kept telling myself, but the notification preview popped up on her screen while she was laughing at some meme, and curiosity, a feral, insatiable beast, took over. My eyes flicked to the screen, and there it was again, the group chat. She was venting. Not subtle hints, not small frustrations, full-on rants about me. "She's useless sometimes, can't believe I still put up with her," one message read. "If she tries to offer help again, I'm going to snap." And then, this one. This single message made my entire chest collapse. "I don't know why I still let her touch my stuff. She's like a parasite, but it's convenient having her around." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hand was trembling, my heart pounding like a drum in a war zone. I wanted to look away, to pretend I didn't see it, but my eyes were glued. And then, almost immediately, another wave of emotion hit. Rage. Not just at her, but at myself. How could I have allowed myself to be treated like this? For years. How could I have laughed, shared secrets, offered help, and even let her touch my favorite things without a second thought, knowing now what she really thought? And then, something snapped. The logic I had been clinging to, better to be used than to be alone, disintegrated into smoke. I got up, grabbed my jacket, and without saying a word, walked out. The cold night air hit my face like a slap, and I felt simultaneously liberated and completely broken. I wanted to scream, to call her out, to tear down the walls we had built around our friendship. But I didn't. I just kept walking, my shoes echoing against the empty streets, my mind racing faster than I could process. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. Every memory of her, every laugh, every hug, every "let's go grab coffee" was tainted now. I couldn't stop replaying the messages in my head, imagining her saying them aloud, watching me with that fake smile she always had. And then, when I finally texted her, I did something I never thought I'd do. I lied. I told her I had to cancel our plans because I was not feeling well. I didn't say why. I couldn't. And even though I was furious, I also felt this sick, twisted relief. I didn't have to confront her yet. I didn't have to face her lying eyes, the way she always made me feel small while pretending otherwise. But then it got worse. Over the next week, she started texting me relentlessly. "Where are you? Are you okay? I missed hanging out." I wanted to reply with everything, the messages, my anger, my hurt, but my fingers froze over the keyboard. I couldn't bring myself to ruin the image I had of us, the idea of friendship that I had clung to even as it slowly suffocated me. And so I typed polite, short responses. "I'm okay, thanks. Sorry, busy week." Every message felt like a betrayal of my own feelings, a confirmation that I was still her puppet. And then, the kicker. One night, she invited me to a small get-together with some mutual friends. Normally, I would have declined, but something in me wanted to see her, to gauge her behavior, to confirm what I already knew. I walked in, and at first, everything seemed normal. She smiled, she laughed, she introduced me to a few people who barely knew me, and I nodded along. But then, as the night progressed, I overheard her again. Not just subtle comments this time. Full-blown whispers, sharp enough for me to catch from across the room. Honestly, I don't know why I let her sit next to me. She's so annoying. But she's convenient. I froze. My stomach dropped. I wanted to bolt, to scream, to pull her aside and demand answers. But instead I laughed. A sharp, forced laugh that caught her attention. She glanced at me, confused, and I gave her a smile that was far too wide, far too fake. And in that moment, something inside me twisted. I realized I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was trapped in this absurd play of deception, where both of us were actors, except I had no lines, no control, and no script. The culmination of all this, the betrayal, the humiliation, the emotional exhaustion, hit me when she reached for the last slice of pizza. We had been joking about splitting it, and I moved my hand to grab it first. She stopped me. "Oh no, I've been craving this all week," she said, smiling. And for a split second, my brain screamed, "Do it. Just slap it out of her hand. Show her." But I didn't. I let her take it. I even smiled as she bit into it, savoring her victory like she had been savoring my naivety for years. Walking home that night, I realized something terrifying. I had been complicit in my own suffering. I had allowed someone to dictate my self-worth, my time, my energy. And yet, I couldn't stop. Not because I loved her exactly, but because I had no one else. The thought of facing life without her, even after everything, was unbearable. And that's the cruelest, most humiliating part. I knew I was being used, and I let it happen. Every single time. Nobody knows this. Not a soul. And I'm starting to wonder if I ever will. Would you have left, confronted her, or stayed silent like I did? What would you have done in my place? A few days after the pizza incident, I realized I couldn't keep pretending forever. My own brain had started turning on me, a constant loop of self-loathing and what-ifs that refused to shut down. I kept replaying the group chat messages in my head, imagining every sarcastic remark, every hidden joke at my expense, and how she had probably been thinking them the entire time I smiled at her. I couldn't escape it. Even when I tried to sleep, the words echoed in my mind, sharper and louder than any nightmare I had ever had. And then, out of the blue, an opportunity appeared. She invited me to help her move some furniture. Normally, I would have hesitated. Moving heavy objects with someone who despises you is a delicate, soul-crushing task, but I accepted immediately. Partly out of habit, partly because I didn't have a good reason to refuse. Maybe I wanted to see her in action, see if the facade would crack. Or maybe I just needed to feel useful, even if it came at my own expense. The day started normally enough. We were hauling boxes into her apartment, laughing at the ridiculous sizes of the packages, joking about breaking our backs for free. But then she made a comment, casual, almost unnoticed if you weren't listening carefully. Honestly, I don't know why I let you help. It's like having a free employee who cries when I point out mistakes. I stopped mid-step. The box in my hands suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My vision blurred for a second, and I almost dropped it. I wanted to confront her, to throw the box at her, to scream at the top of my lungs about every insult, every sarcasm, every betrayal I had endured. But I didn't. I swallowed hard, nodded, and said, "It's fine, I don't mind." And the lie tasted bitter in my mouth, like I had swallowed razor blades. As we moved through the apartment, the insults became more subtle but equally sharp. She complained about how slow I was, about how I couldn't lift boxes properly, and about how she'd survive without me if she had to. I forced myself to smile, to make small jokes, to laugh along. Every comment was like a dagger, but I held it in, biting my lip until it bled a little from the tension. And yet, despite the humiliation, part of me felt a strange, twisted pride. I was enduring. I was surviving. I was still here, still in her orbit, still somehow relevant, even if only as her unpaid labor and emotional punching bag. Then came the breaking point. We reached her living room, and she gestured toward a massive, impossibly heavy piece of furniture. "This one's too heavy," she said with a smirk. "Maybe you should try lifting it first." The implication was clear. I would struggle, I would fail, and she would watch. And I did. I grunted, strained, lifted with every ounce of strength I had, and the thing didn't budge. She laughed, sharp and triumphant, the sound cutting through my pride like a knife. And here's the part that makes me cringe even thinking about it. Instead of getting angry, instead of walking away, instead of finally standing up for myself, I laughed. I laughed through the struggle, through the humiliation, through the sting of knowing she hated me, because somehow, that was easier than admitting I was broken inside. My laugh was hollow, empty, but it kept her entertained. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I had become addicted to the pain. Not in a literal, I enjoy being hurt way, but in the sense that the hurt had become familiar, comforting even, because it meant she was still paying attention, still interacting with me, still letting me exist in her world, even if only as a convenience. After that, we finally finished moving the furniture. I was exhausted, drenched in sweat, and my arms ached from lifting more than I thought humanly possible. She flopped onto the couch, stretching and sighing in relief. "Thanks for helping," she said, and for a brief moment, her tone was almost genuine. But then, almost immediately, the sarcasm crept back in. "You know, I'd be completely fine without you though. Just saying." And I smiled. I nodded. I said something like, "Yeah, no problem," because that's what I had trained myself to say, what I had rehearsed for months, the words of someone who had surrendered all dignity for the sake of connection. And as I left her apartment that evening, I felt a mixture of exhaustion, shame, and something else. Something like anticipation. I knew I couldn't keep going like this forever. Something was about to happen, whether I wanted it to or not, but I didn't know what. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every insult, every glance, every laugh, every fake compliment, and I started imagining scenarios. I imagined confronting her, yelling at her, finally telling her everything I had seen and felt. I imagined walking away, slamming the door on years of a friendship that had never really existed in the way I thought it had. I imagined her crying, apologizing, admitting she had been wrong, and me forgiving her, because somehow, deep down, I still wanted her to like me. But none of these scenarios felt real. None of them felt possible. And yet, the anticipation of the inevitable confrontation, whatever form it would take, hung over me like a storm cloud. I knew the next step would define everything. My next choice, my next action, could either free me or crush me completely. And that's when it hit me. I was no longer just a friend. I had become a character in my own life, trapped in a story I didn't write, performing for an audience that didn't care about my feelings, and living in a limbo where the truth could destroy everything or change nothing. So here I am, caught in this mess, waiting for the storm, knowing full well that when it finally arrives, there's no guarantee I'll survive it unscathed. The irony is suffocating. The person I trusted most, the one I called a friend, might never know how close she came to losing me completely. Have you ever stayed silent when the truth could have set you free, just because you feared what would happen if you spoke up? Or would you have screamed, walked away, and never looked back? It finally happened. I don't even know how to describe it without my hands shaking as I think about it. The tipping point, the moment everything I had tried to ignore, everything I had bottled up, came crashing down like a wave I couldn't swim against. I had been pretending for months, hiding the truth from everyone, including myself. Pretending she was my friend, that our laughs were real, that our inside jokes were actually inside, that the moments we shared meant something. And all along, she had been quietly, relentlessly, tearing me apart. It started with a simple text. Nothing unusual. "Hey, want to hang out tonight?" I stared at my phone for minutes, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I wanted to type, "No." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to yell everything I knew into her face. But I didn't. Habit 1. Fear 1. Loneliness 1. I typed the usual, "Sure, what time?" When I arrived at her apartment, the place was dimly lit, cozy as always, with a faint smell of coffee lingering in the air. She smiled when she opened the door, that familiar, disarming smile, and invited me in. I stepped past her threshold, past the invisible line between being her friend and being her fool. Everything felt normal at first. Too normal. And that's when I saw it. The phone. Her phone, buzzing on the coffee table, screen lit, notification from the group chat. Something in me snapped. I grabbed it. I didn't mean to. My hands were shaking again, and I think part of me hoped I wouldn't see anything new, that maybe the messages had stopped, that maybe she had changed. But the truth hit harder than any expectation. There it was. More messages, piling on top of each other, revealing a depth of resentment I didn't know existed. And then, the line that finally broke me. "She's pathetic. She thinks I like her. I can't wait until she realizes she's nobody." I froze. The words weren't just cruel. They were surgical. They dissected every insecurity I had, every moment I had tried to convince myself I was wanted. I felt a rush of heat, then cold, then nausea. And before I could think, she walked over, smiling, reached for a cup of coffee, and said, "Everything okay?" I should have walked out. I should have screamed. I should have thrown the phone at her and never come back. But instead, I smiled. I laughed. I made a joke about the coffee being too strong. I let her sip it, let her watch me sip mine, and I kept pretending. Hours passed. We watched TV. We talked. We laughed. And every laugh, every casual word, every fake smile I gave her was a betrayal of my own pain. I realized in that moment that I had become a master of deception. Not just for her, but for myself. I could act normal while my heart was breaking. I could smile while my soul screamed. I could pretend to exist in her world while knowing I had no real place in it. Then, as if the universe wanted to humiliate me further, she leaned over and whispered something. Casual, intimate, the kind of words you expect only from someone who actually likes you. I'm glad you're here. You always make things easier for me. I felt my stomach twist. Part of me wanted to pull her into a confrontation, to finally say everything I had been holding in for months. But another part, the part that had been addicted to her attention, to the faintest shred of connection, stayed silent. I let her words wash over me, let the irony sting, and nodded. Yeah, me too, I said. And then came the most absurd, humiliating moment of all. She reached over and rested her hand on mine. My brain screamed, do something. Anything. Don't let her do this. But I didn't move. I just let it happen. And in that touch, there was both comfort and cruelty. She didn't realize, I think, how much power she had over me, how much I had surrendered without even noticing. And I didn't stop her. Walking home that night, alone on empty streets, I felt something shift. I realized I was living in a world where love, friendship, and loyalty were transactional. Where I had invested everything into someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenience. And yet, I couldn't stop. Not yet. Not completely. Part of me still hoped, irrationally, that one day she would see me, really see me, and everything would make sense. But here's the truth. I don't think she ever will. And I don't think anyone knows. Not my family, not my coworkers, not the friends I pretend to have. This secret, this twisted, painful, humiliating truth, is mine. And I carry it every day, in the way I laugh at her jokes, in the way I answer her messages instantly, in the way I pretend to exist in her world while knowing she doesn't truly care about me. I wonder sometimes if I should tell her. If I should confront her. If I should walk away and never look back. But then I remember the fear of being alone, the weight of my own loneliness, and I hesitate. Because even in knowing the truth, even in being used and humiliated, I am here. I am still her friend. Still her convenience. Still trapped in this absurd cycle. So, I leave it to you. If you were me, would you finally speak? Would you walk away? Or would you stay, like I have, letting yourself be used just to avoid the crushing emptiness of solitude? Have you ever hidden the truth from someone you cared about, just to keep a connection that was slowly killing you? Would you have the courage to finally let go, or would you stay, pretending everything is okay, even when it's not?